Since Iran's Cultural Revolution in 1979, Iranian women covered by black chadors and hijabs have become the stereotypical image of the country's religious and political identity. But now women in the Middle East and in the U.S. are using their clothes as a way to express themselves and their political beliefs in bold new ways.
Fashion blogger Hoda Katabi uses fashion to bridge that gap between the U.S. and the Middle East with her popular fashion blog. Oh boy, say it for me.
Azad.
And her book, Tehran's Street Style. She joins us now. Good morning. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
So you are an Iranian American that grew up in Oklahoma.
Yes.
How'd that go?
Unfortunately, it was quite the experience. Definitely, I think. When I first started wearing the hijab or had scarf in 6th grade, that was easily the worst year of my life because Oklahoma is a very homogeneously white and conservative state, and so I was physically assaulted. People tried to pull off my hijab. It was basically like several years of trauma that I basically had to go through, and for me that really led into where I kind of am today and made me look about fashion in different ways, and the ways that how we dress really impacts the way that people engage with us. So if I wore a scarf around my neck, I probably wouldn't have gotten punched in the face.
But even today, in, let's say, more mainstream areas, you still have people who have a view of what you are and what you're about based on what you're wearing. How would you describe that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that I think anti-Muslim racism in this country is beyond sort of the individual bias against each other. It really has to do with we live in a system and a structure that actually profits from violence against Muslims. So when we look at where a lot of anti-Muslim propaganda is coming from, we can see actually weapons manufacturers are invested in basically perpetuating anti-Muslim bias, surveillance companies, and even like countries like Israel, which actually profit from dehumanization of Muslims.
Would like to see Iran go back to that before women were wearing hijabs, or would you like to be meeting somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, I think these photos being seen out of context is always really decontextualizing what actually was taking place in the country. So the people who dressed in the sort of Western dress that we're seeing now are actually a very minority group of people. They were upper class people. So if you wore a hijab, there was actually a period of mandatory unveiling where someone could actually pull the hijab off of you. So it was an incredibly violent time and very intolerant. But we kind of see these images of it as nostalgia of like, oh, we want to go back to this time, but we have to understand that this isn't actually how the majority of Iranians lived. So actually images of like mini skirts of Afghanistani women were shown to Trump earlier this month as an excuse for why the U.S. should keep troops on the ground, because oh, we should like go back to the time where Muslim women or Afghan women were wearing mini skirts. But we don't understand that if we look at education levels, you know, like education of women in Iran right now greatly exceeds what it was back during this time where women were wearing miniskirts. So if we want to talk about women's rights, let's talk about more like their social economic status rather than just what they're wearing.
Let's talk about nuclear weapons.
Okay.
Our viewers, some of our viewers may say, we cannot trust Iran. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I don't think we can trust this country. I mean, what has this country done to the majority of the countries in the Middle East? You know, like, I don't think Iran's having nuclear weapons. I'm a pacifist. I don't believe in violence. But also, when we look at the legacy of imperialism and colonization in the Middle East, and we see the legacy of this country and all of the violence that it has not only created, but also created the capacity for. A lot of these weapons in the Middle East are completely brought in by the United States.
A lot of Americans might take offense to that. You're an American. You don't sound like an American when you say that. You know what I mean?
That's because I've read, you know, and I think that it's really important that we look beyond sort of these really simple narratives that we're told, whether it's about Muslim women, whether it's about the legacy of this country, and knowing that this country literally was built on the backs of black slaves and after the genocide of indigenous people. And I think there's a lot that we can be proud about, but I think that we shouldn't let that sort of blindside us for the realities of the situation.
Well, you can check out Hoda's blog at jujuazad.com, and you have a fashion show coming up. Tell us about that. Or you're getting a collab together.
So I'm working on run a sewing refugee co-op of women here in Chicago. So basically trying to support Muslim women and immigrants and refugees here who already have sewing skills but may not speak English or may need childcare while they're on the job. So making sort of work accessible to them.
And they can find out about that on your blog.
Yes, they can.
All right. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.